live an inspired life. We either coming out of a storm, going into a storm. We've all heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's true. It's life. But I've just learned to be inspired, by all of those events. So like for my daughter, I'm inspired to be a great dad because of her situation. Like it just inspired me to be better. When the business fell apart, I'm like, it inspired me to go create something new. If someone's watching this and the whole fitness and wellness standpoint hit them and they're 100 pounds overweight, be inspired by the journey. It's gonna be a hard journey, but be inspired by it. Be inspired by the business dreams and goals that you have, and it's a tall mountain to climb. Be inspired by the mountain you got to climb.
Welcome back to the Pay It Forward podcast. I am one of your hosts, Austin Seward, along with my co-host here, Keegan Walls. And today we have on Brandon LaRue, who is a friend of mine. He is the owner of Well-Built Humans, which is a fitness, nutrition, coaching, and mentorship business, along with an apparel brand called Flanouflage, which he's sporting today.
Yes, sir.
Brandon has a wife and kids, lives in Southeast Minnesota. Big outdoorsman. We share that passion together, hunting and fishing, and excited to have Brandon here today. So thanks for being here.
I'm excited to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah, man.
Well, why don't you share with our listeners a little bit what you have going on right now? You got a lot going on. You got a lot of irons in the fire. Well-Built Humans is a lot of different things. So why don't you walk us through what does that look like?
Yeah, so it was kind of a shotgun approach when I started Well-Built Humans. So it was just, where is this going to stick? It's stuck in a few things. So Well-Built Humans is primarily kettlebell training, I would say, is like kind of the main vein of Well-Built Humans. And then it's nutrition coaching as well. There's a supplement line off of it. And then mentoring is relatively new in the last 6 months, mentoring some at-risk youth. And I got a staff of 3 other mentors. So that's been a rewarding thing, a new aspect of Well-Built Humans. I call it like a human performance brand. Mm-hmm. It's, that way I don't box myself in. Maybe it might be a detriment. My personality is just kind of chasing passions and stuff like that. But in addition to Well-Built Humans, there's Flanouflage. That's going on about 2 years old now. And we'll probably dive into the origins of that. Yeah. And then I have another small business called Well-Built Kettlebells, which is we have a unique product, a kettlebell backpack, which is one of a kind. There's not anything else like it. And then I coach. I coach. We were just talking about football. So I coach high school football. I'm not the head coach. I don't know if I could handle all that, but I'm an assistant coach, and it's fun for me. And like we were saying before, I get to be scout team quarterback. Rico, Uncle Rico, and then I'm the new head coach of the wrestling program in La Crescent. And then I coach my son's baseball, and then I got a son and 2 daughters, and husband, and then I got to hunt.
Yep.
And I got to fish. Yeah. So, but a busy life is a good life. So.
Yep. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Thanks for being here. We're looking forward to diving in.
Are you looking for a poster child for Well-Built Humans? Because that's actually what my wife calls me. She looks at me. So I didn't know if you stole that name from you saw videos of the podcast and you're like, oh, that's a well-built human. But if you ever need a poster,
shirt off or
right. It depends on what you're going for. If it's the before,
we got grandma.
If you got a poster child of here's who physically needs my program, I could be the poster.
Yeah.
Keegan of 3 years ago, maybe I could be the in between. Yeah. But now I'm the front end guy.
That's funny. So where did this passion for health and wellness come from?
I think that's a really good question. It began with sports. It was a means I remember the turning point when I started working out for the first time, formally. There's exercise found within playing the sports, right? But when I actually spent some of my own time to work out, it was when I was a 7th grader. And my dad worked out. So there's something to say about having that modeled for you and seeing your dad do that. Mm-hmm. So I think it was kind of those seeds were planted. But when I was a 7th grader, growing up in like youth wrestling, I was pretty successful. I wasn't like a phenom, but I would win most of the tournaments locally. We didn't travel much, and so I did pretty well. And then, but when you turn the page and you get into like junior high wrestling in Minnesota, for that matter, like you would, as a 7th grader, sometimes you'd be going against 8th graders, 9th graders, because it's a weight class sport. And if the kids weren't on varsity, you're all essentially wrestling junior varsity. So I got manhandled a few times as a 7th grader. I think I was like 500, if I remember correctly. And I was like, part of that adversity is necessary to get better at whatever you're trying to do. But I was like, man, I thought I was good at this sport, and my dad said, maybe you just need to get stronger, So he bought me a sand-filled, old school barbell, dumbbells, and he didn't give me a structured program to follow. I just started, benching and doing bicep curls, calf raises on the stairs. I had like a ab crunch thing, push-ups, pull-ups, like nothing. Like my imagination just kind of ran wild with it. And I started to like feel good. I started to see some changes just in my own body as a 7th grader that were like good just for confidence, aesthetically, who doesn't want to have some muscles? Yep. Especially when you grow up watching Rocky and Rambo and, Arnold Schwarzenegger movies and Chuck Norris. So I saw that. And then the next year wrestling, I kind of became the hammer rather than the nail. Like I could tell physically something changed. Like I could hit my moves with authority. I could overpower people, and that was kind of like a big aha moment. So that fueled, football, baseball, and wrestling. I just wanted to be good at those things at that time in my life. And then, aesthetically, as you're growing up as a teenager, and dating girls and stuff like that, it doesn't hurt the cause.
Right.
It doesn't hurt the cause. Right. It gives you confidence. It's kind of like Coach Prime, Deion Sanders back in the day. His philosophy was look good, feel good, play good. You know. Yep. So there's something to be said about that. That's where the origin of it was. And then I wanted to be like a strength coach in college. So I pursued that from an educational standpoint. But it wasn't like nutritionally, that never really clicked for me until I was about 24 years old. And that's when I started working with general population. I was a personal trainer up in the Twin Cities. And when I started to coach men and women how to eat better, I'm big on hypocrisy. Like if I'm going to tell this person they need to eat better, I need to practice it myself. Otherwise it just doesn't sit well with me. Yeah. So that's when I started nutritionally taking better care of myself. Up until then, it was, rice and beans, Totino's pizzas, and Easy Mac, and ramen, and too much beer, in my early 20s. So yeah, and then that's where it all began. Okay. Yeah.
And you worked for a different business doing personal training then?
Yeah. So in my early 20s. I graduated from Minnesota State Mankato exercise science degree with the intention of going into strength conditioning and or physical therapy. So I came back to lacrosse for a season to get some volunteer observation hours at the Gunderson Clinic. And while I was doing that, I was applying to grad schools, and I didn't get in the first time around for PT school, which led me to go into training just to earn some income. And there wasn't much of an industry here compared to the Twin Cities. So I moved up there. And I was at a private kind of like affluent personal training studio. I ended up managing. I worked there for 3 years. And then I got into a strength conditioning role with the Chicago Cubs. I was a minor league strength conditioning coach, which was kind of cool.
Yeah. Tell us more about that. What was your experience doing that?
So it was a great experience. Let's put it that way. Like I've been a Cubs fan my whole life, so there was that.
Hey, wow. Fly the W.
Yeah, fly the dub. And this is back when we were actually pretty good. And we weren't bad.
We were okay this year.
Yeah, we were okay, but we always have
two Minnesota boys saying "we" about the Cubs.
Well, yeah. Well, there's a story about that even. Like when I'm growing up, it was WGN or TNT. Okay. So it was either you're watching the Braves or the Cubs. Okay. The Twins weren't on TV, so it's like. I grew up watching the Cubbies.
Yeah.
So
Anyways.
yeah, the experience was great. Like, I was a little disappointed, like, because I was still kind of am a strength coach nerd. Like, I wanted to be great at it, so I was just in it, studying it, all the performance, all the things related to baseball performance. And then when I got there, it was really plain Jane as far as like their programming. And I remember having some conversations with the coordinator. I'm like, why don't we do these assessments? Why aren't we doing this? And he's just like, he didn't have a good answer for me. So I was a little bummed with that, but he gave me a long leash to kind of do what I wanted to do, so long as I ran it through him first. And he was on board with that. So I ended up being the minor league strength coach for the Daytona Cubs, Daytona Beach, Florida, which is like, Daytona Beach is interesting if you've never been there.
Haven't.
I mean, it sounds great. And it's a cool area, but it's like people went there for spring break in the 80s and never left. You're picking up what I'm putting down.
Yeah.
But that was a cool experience from the aspect of I got to work with professional baseball players. You'd be surprised how weak many of them are. There's just and the cool thing too is like the culture aspect. I got to work with a lot of Dominican kids, Asian kids, so there's that language barrier, but it was kind of cool to figure all that out. But like, and where they're coming from, how explosive they were, yet how minimal strength, like formal strength training they've ever been exposed to.
Yeah.
I mean, they just play baseball.
Yeah.
And they just throw 95, but they can't hold a plank for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Or they can't balance on a single leg. And somehow they hit 450-foot bombs. It's like, so from that aspect too, it kind of makes you wonder, like, all this formal training, like, this guy throws 95.
Yeah. Well, my follow-up question was like, how much of somebody's athletic ability is God-given versus their training and work?
Yeah. Well, I think a fair amount, you got to give props to whatever gifts God gives you.
Yeah.
You can't make a slow person really fast.
Yeah.
Amen.
You must be speedy.
Always.
So, but you can make a slow person less slow.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of it, there's a genetic component to it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But, and it depends on the sport.
Yeah.
But these kids that come from Dominican, they just have so much sports specificity. I mean, they do what they can with what they have.
Yeah.
Yeah. They got a baseball and a bat. They don't have gyms and facilities like we do here. And if you look at the demographics, if you will, of professional sports, and especially in baseball, you see the influence of Latin America, and they're doing a lot without as much.
Yeah.
So it makes you almost flips it on its head a little bit too.
Yeah.
But from an injury standpoint, that's where the formal training really comes to play for, not having any kind of formal training. They also break down pretty easily, as explosive as they can be. So that formal training was really kind of established, like, how do you keep them on the field?
Yeah.
Did you work with anybody, like any big name people that were coming up through the Cubs?
Yes. Yeah. So DJ LeMahieu is probably the biggest name.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah. So he's a Yankee now, but he's been a batting champion, all-star, multi-time all-star player. Who else? Justin Bohr. He was I think he cracked the all-star lineup. He was in the home run derby, I think. Big left-handed bat. Chris Archer.
Yep.
Chris Archer. He was a really cool cat. I really enjoyed spending time with him. And he's with the Twins now, I'm pretty sure. But
it's like baseball's like third or fourth on my list.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know enough.
Yeah. So, yeah. But and then there's Brooks Raley, which is kind of where I got my son's name from. My older.
Really?
Yeah, Brooks. I really like that name. Brooks Robinson was a great third baseman way back in the day, and then I developed a relationship with this guy, Brooks Raley. He's still playing. I think he's with the Devil. No, yeah, Devil Rays, Tampa Bay. He's just a kind of middle relief guy that nobody would know, but still pretty sweet when you're
Still
playing
in the big league.
Yeah.
And now you get to help bums like me lift kettlebells.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, everyone's an athlete, right?
Well, that's using it. If we're going to call Austin an athlete, it's using it pretty broad.
Hey, now. So when did your entrepreneurial journey start? When did you make the decision to go from working for somebody to working for yourself?
I think out of frustration and disgust, just financially.
Okay.
I think that's where it probably stemmed from. So crazy story. So my first like entrepreneurial pursuit was in network marketing. So and it could dovetail with the Cubs because it all happened while I was with the Cubs. Because that's one thing I didn't talk about was how poor you got paid.
Okay.
I mean, it was awful.
Really?
Oh yeah. I think it's better now, but this is 2010, so 13 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a stipend of $21.75 a month.
Okay.
And that didn't even cover your living expenses. So you had to pay rent on top of that. I mean, so that's not much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you married at the time?
Engaged.
Engaged.
So I was
Okay.
engaged to my wife now, and I had a master's degree, worth of loans. So and my undergrad. So I was rice and beans in it.
Yeah.
At least. But so I got exposed to a supplement line while I was working with the Cubs, and there was an association with the Cubs, so it had some credibility. It wasn't just some random weird thing. And I found out you could earn some income by distributing it, because I had no clue of that whole world of network marketing. Yeah. Interestingly enough, because I grew up in a family where my mother, she passed away when I was 14, but she was a very successful Mary Kay lady.
Really?
So I just thought that was her job growing up as a kid. You didn't know any better, right? But then as I was older and I started to kind of like think about, oh my goodness, Mom was a Mary Kay lady, and she made more money than my dad.
Really?
No wonder her car was pink.
Right. Exactly.
She had the pink car?
She did.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So I started to kind of like connect some dots there when I was talking to this guy, because I just wanted some product, and he's like, hey, well, let me tell you a little bit more about it. You can earn some income if you want. I'm like, I'm a broke strength coach. Yeah, sure. Tell me more about it. So it was just going to be a side hustle for me. I didn't have any like I was still in strength coach mode, but it took off. Like in 6 months, I was earning more with that than I was as a strength coach. And so I've always stayed in training and coaching. I've never set that down. I never shelved it while I was pursuing, nutrition and supplements. So I'm grateful for that, because I've always stayed sharp.
Yeah.
And my credibility in that arena has never wavered.
Yeah.
But I pursued the business side of that supplement company for about 10 years, and it became financially pretty rewarding for us, to the point where that was all we did for our income. And so that's where the entrepreneur, and I learned a lot. It didn't end well, not anything to our own, nothing that we could have done.
Yeah.
It just, from a compensation thing, they just changed it and the money went away.
Yeah.
So, but man, the amount of books that I read and the amount of personal development and leadership, summits that I've gone to, like you can't put a price tag on stuff like that. That stuff, it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
So even though it wasn't a storybook ending, it was worth it.
Yeah. So tell us more about like that transition of like making a really good income, doing this for 10 years, and then one day they just pulled the plug. Like, what did that feel like?
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's a little bit of shock and there's a little bit of panic. 'Cause if you get accustomed to a certain income level, it's like, your lifestyle kind of rises to,
lifestyle creep.
Yeah. And we weren't living the lifestyle of the rich and famous, but, we had a nice home and we had a little acreage. But, even things like that, even living beneath your means, it still rises.
Yep.
So, and then your family, kids, you start to think about all those things. So, I think, I from a Christian standpoint, I gave my life to Christ when I was 27, and thank God that I did, because I can't say that I'm driven by money. Like, I'm driven to not have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But when it was taken away from me, I wasn't like some of my friends and some of my associations that I had who were higher income earners within that business, I mean, their lives collapsed.
Really?
Collapsed. I mean, divorces and bankruptcies, and then they've just been chasing something ever since, trying to find the next thing. Not that, I mean, you gotta, when I say that, I hope it doesn't sound, with condemnation, but and it just reminds me of, like, in scriptures, being content in all circumstances. And, my wife and I have had a conversation about that often, like, because we saw some people's lives kind of falling apart. Like, wow, what is going on? Like, were they not wise with their money, or did money kind of become the master there, or what? And we were just like, when it was all taken away and we were penny pinching, and we're still not, near where we were financially. Yeah. The joy had never left. And I just thank God for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you went right into Well-Built Humans, was after that?
Yeah. So when that plug got pulled, so to speak, it was, well, now what? Do I go find a job? Do I go 9 to 5 it? I got some skills here that I know could probably lend well to a company, And then I started throwing a few applications out, and then I was considering whitetail properties.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a guy that was doing it.
Real estate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And he was kind of on me about it, and it didn't come to fruition. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to use what I've learned, and I'm just going to build something of my own.
Love it.
It's not going to have someone else's brand attached to it. It's going to be something that I built.
Yeah.
And I to this day feel like all those years was kind of preparation for something like that. It wasn't for someone else. It was to build something that I got to build with kind of my own two hands, so to speak. So yeah, Well-Built Humans was born out of the fires of adversity.
Yes.
Were you back locally at that time, or what was that?
I wasn't.
Were you still down?
I was still up in South Metro, Twin Cities.
Okay.
Yeah, and what brought us back partly was needing to downsize. We knew we had to downsize our lifestyle. So I sold my nice truck, and we sold our house. We got it at a good price, so we made some money there. Mm-hmm. And then we started looking around the metro area. I've always kind of joked with my wife, like, we should really go check out La Crescent. And for years, because this area is special. I probably don't need to tell you guys that. Yeah. But like, just from an outdoorsman standpoint, the seasons, it's beautiful. There's always something to do. Mm-hmm. And I was taking Brooks fishing one day. Sometimes we would just take the river road down and just find random spots and go fishing with no plan. And we found ourselves in La Crescent. I think we were going to stop by my grandma and grandpa's place at the time. And she's like, hey, there's this listing in La Crescent. You should go check it out. And I'm like, oh, I got her. I got her. Like, La Crescent's on the table. Yeah. So when we were back for Apple Fest that fall, this would have been, I think, fall of 2019. Okay. There was a house on the market, like a block away from where we were watching the parade.
That's awesome.
And that night, well, common friend of ours, Josh Newman.
Who's going to be on after this?
Is he?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I called Newman. I'm like, hey, I know this is late. Like, can you get us a showing? We're leaving tonight. And he made it work.
That's awesome.
Shortly thereafter, we put an offer in. Boom.
That's great.
I guess we're moving back.
Yeah.
It's been about 4 years since we've been back.
Cool.
Yeah. It's been good.
So was that transition of like going from the multi-level marketing to Well-Built Humans and maybe some financial hardship, was that the turning point in, you would say, your life or your business, or was there something else that drove the trajectory of the direction of your life and business more so than that?
In business, yeah, I would say for sure in the last there's multiple turning points in our lives, right?
Yep.
And they typically all seem to stem from the fires of adversity, right?
Yep.
So that, from a business standpoint, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And in building a brand is not an easy thing to do. Like, if you were to look at ways to not earn money fast, building a brand would probably be number one. But hey, I'm not afraid of a challenge. So I've just been grinding, and piecing together. I feel like I'm spinning plates sometimes, but the Lord's blessed us with, between my wife and I, to piece it together somehow.
Yeah.
To continue to provide and, still have a few extra bucks to go on date nights and vacations here and there. So,
that's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
How did you decide for well-built humans, obviously doing all that training like with the Cubs and stuff, why did you decide on why kettlebells? Because that's the focus, right?
Yeah. So I got into kettlebells going all the way back to 2007. My really good friend of mine, his name's Clinton Helget. He was the owner of the studio I trained at, and he had a set of kettlebells. And there's a guy in the kettlebell circles named Pavel Sasalin, I think is how you pronounce his last name.
That sounds like a guy that would be
Pavel, yeah. A little Russian, and he's got an interesting delivery. But he lived up in that area. So there was kind of a kettlebell little nucleus up in the cities. And Clinton kind of exposed me to training with them. And at first I was like, these are weird.
Yeah.
Like, where's the dumbbells? Where's the traditional stuff?
Yeah.
But the more I used them, I started doing kettlebell swings, Turkish get-ups, and then I started doing some snatching with them. I bought a pair, and I started when I was busy at home and I couldn't get workouts in, or if I didn't have a gym membership, I would use my kettlebells. And I would get great workouts in 15 minutes, So that kind of always stuck with me. And then when I lived out in the country and didn't have a gym membership, I had an outbuilding that I just wanted to equip with some basic minimal tools, and kettlebells just kind of became the way that I trained. And when you're busy, I think there's a direct application, like as a wrestling coach, for example, they're going to get a lot of kettlebells. Like, just from a conditioning standpoint, from a grip strength, it just gives you like awkward, unconventional strength and movement ability. Just the way the thing is built and the movements that you do, it's just way more than kind of the conventional movements that you do. So, but you combine that with a busy life, the efficiency thing is probably, I've said that for probably a decade now. I can get done in 30 minutes or less. Like our workouts that we do, the workout time frame is 15 minutes. We spend 15 minutes warming up, getting loose, doing some mobility work, but the workouts are 15 minutes. And of that 15 minutes, if you actually nerd out a little bit, and like the actual work period, sometimes it's 5 minutes and the other's rest.
Yeah.
And we get so much done.
Yeah. I'll reemphasize the efficiency part of it, because I struggled for a long time. Like, I was an athlete in high school, all throughout high school, multiple sports, played football, first year in college, and like always was forced to go in the gym and work out with the team. And like, that was just a part of my life. And then college came, and after football, and started drinking a little too much beer, and like kind of caught up to me. Right. Yeah. And I wasn't being consistent of going into the gym, or I'd go through a couple months time frame where I'd start going. But once I started to get more busy in business, it's like the time that it takes to go drive to the gym is 10 to 15 minutes to get there, and then to walk upstairs, to go in the gym, to work out for an hour, to come home, to go back and have to shower and clean up if you do it in the middle of the day, or wake up really early in the morning to do all of that before you get going. Like, it's a 2 hour, 3 hour ordeal. And it's not that it's not doable. It's just, it's far less convenient, and I was not able to be consistent with it. And that's one thing, the biggest thing that I've learned in working with Brandon is the consistency part of it, and to not go to one end of the extreme of having to work out really, really hard and go on this diet. Like, just do what you're doing and make little tweaks. Like, work out. I can go out to my detached garage and, like you said, in and out in a half hour, and we work out at 6 o'clock. I'm back in the house by 6:40 and can be showered up and ready by 7:30.
Yeah.
That just wasn't possible for me before, and I was not consistent with it. So the efficiency is crazy.
Yeah. And
special.
And it's not a fancy marketing buzzword.
Yeah.
Like, why should you kettlebell train?
Yeah.
Efficiency.
Right.
People aren't, they're not drawn to that.
Yeah.
They want to hear all their pain points addressed.
Yep.
But it's like, time.
Yeah.
Well, you can continue to spend your 2 to 3 hours. I'll spend my half hour.
Yeah.
So what does the program look like then for people who don't know what it is? I mean, Austin's done it. I've never done it. Kettlebells, I have images or theories of what I think it is pop up in my head, but what does it look like, and what's some like the science or the facts behind it of why, even if though it's efficient, because people might be asking, right? Because I'm a cynical person, right? So I go, okay, efficiency, 30 minutes. Yeah, but is it really going to be better than me finding an hour to do traditional bench press, back, lats, legs?
For sure. Yeah, so that's a great question. When you talk about like hypertrophy and you talk about strength training and then you talk about high intensity interval training, like when you look at accomplishing a lot in a small amount of time, when you look, and if you're to dig into research, you'll see that metabolically speaking, if you can do a lot of work in a short amount of time, it just, from a very common sense standpoint, makes sense. Where people, I think they think about kettlebell training as it's just this conditioning tool. It's like a fat loss tool. It's not weights that are really all that challenging. It starts out that way for people because there's a little bit of a learning curve when you're working with kettlebells. There's a lot of movements that are very similar to what you'd use with a barbell or a dumbbell, squats, lunges, presses, all those things, rows. But when it comes to doing some of the more explosive, more dynamic movements like swings and snatches, high pulls, Turkish get-ups, there's a little bit more of a learning curve. That being said, if you can accomplish, typical strength training, like if you look at research, they'll say like 3 to 4 sets of 8 to 12 reps is kind of like the load or the volume that you want for hypertrophy. And if you break that down into our 15-minute programs, if you were actually to count the number of reps that we're doing, you're going to find us right in that range. We just don't rest. Like our rest is very small in comparison where you go to the gym,
buddies and
scroll on the ticky-tacky for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then 3 minutes later, you might hit another set. It's like boom, we're hammering. And metabolically, like that does something from an intensity factor. That does something, inside of you from a physiological standpoint. So metabolically, we're increasing our metabolic rate. We're getting strength training because the other thing, the more you train. So for example, I don't remember what Austin probably started with a pair of 35s. That's usually what I recommend most dudes and women. Typically, I recommend they start with a couple 18-pounders. Well, after the first 6 weeks or so, they're not feeling so heavy anymore.
Yep.
So now you go up. Kettlebells are weird. They're kind of metric. So like the weights that I'll share with you are a little different than 15, 20, 25.
Yeah.
But he probably went up to 44s after that. Well, now it's a whole new stimulus. Now, that's kind of the concept of linear periodization. We're progressively overloading the body. So once 35s become easy, go to 44s. So now that workout that was kind of manageable got really hard again. And then once 44s get easy, now you go to 53s. So all the while you're getting some progressive overload, which if you want your body to change, you have to continually challenge it. So there's some of the geeky nerdery behind it,
But the biggest thing is you have to be consistent with it, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Maybe you could get a better workout going to the gym if you're doing that for an hour or 2 hours every day and you consistently do that.
Right.
Maybe you can, but I don't think Keegan's been consistent at the gym.
Yeah.
I don't know. Wait, this has turned into like a personal attack. I was asking it from a standpoint of the listeners are out there. I don't know how this got really personal really quick. Well, clearly, the discipline hasn't been there, right? But I appreciate that.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
So while I got my master's degree in human movement was the name of my major, and so I have an appreciation for all of it. I really do. If someone loves to train with a barbell and dumbbell and they want to spend 2 hours at the gym, and if they have the ability to do that, by all means.
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways to skin this cat. I could make an argument, and it'd probably be a good marketing strategy to go at war with everything else. Dumbbells are stupid. Barbells are stupid. It's only kettlebells or you're an idiot.
Yeah.
I just don't, that's not in me. Like I'm going to celebrate. If you're like, I love training with barbells, I'm going to celebrate that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tear down, resistance is resistance. I just think kettlebells they're fun. They're challenging. They're mentally engaging. And you can just get a lot done when you learn how to use them in a short amount of time.
I think that makes sense though, because like you said, like if you're you're training to be a power lifter or whatever, you're probably doing a 2-hour workout.
Yeah.
But the fact is, not everybody has that. Everybody's got a different lifestyle. Like there's certain things that meet certain people's criteria.
Yes.
And your program is probably really good for people. The majority of people I don't have 2 hours in my app.
Yeah.
As somebody who is in business and real estate, and I have a child and a wife and a family, and
right, like it's like great training for life. Now, if you're competing for something specifically, you got to train there's the SAID principle, specific adaptations to imposed demands. Like if you're going on a elk hunting trip, you better be hiking.
Yep, with the kettlebell backpack.
Yeah, with something on your back, because that's what you're going to do, because a 15-minute workout won't necessarily prepare you for the grueling miles you're about to put it on the mountain.
Yep.
If you're a sprinter, you got to sprint. If you're a power lifter, you got to power lift.
Yep.
It's just the way it is.
So before I got involved with you, Brandon, I was on and off of keto, and like it worked really well, and lost a bunch of weight to start, and then you'd lose the weight you want, and then you go off and you put it right back on.
Yeah.
And then I found that the more I did it, the less I lost over time. And man, I can't tell you how much it's changed every aspect of my life since doing kettlebells, since tracking my calories, and just trying to live a steady lifestyle and just eat healthy, eat in moderation, work out, not balls to the walls. Like, talk more about just the importance of that, and like some of these fad diets that are out there. Maybe bust the myth of that versus what you recommend.
Boy, I'll sure try. The myths, they got some staying power. They really do, man.
Get them.
Because everything you just said was like, again, from a marketing standpoint, are all the non-hacks.
Yeah.
Consistent. Ooh.
Yeah.
Like, it's the truth.
Yep.
So your question again, nutritionally?
Just bust the myth of the quick fix fad diets.
Yeah, I mean, there's at our men's conference, we actually addressed this. I asked a bunch of dudes like, hey, what are some fad diets that you're aware of or that you've tried? Keto was one of them. Atkins, which has now become kind of rebranded keto.
Yep.
There's paleo. There's vegan, Mediterranean. I know there's way more than that. There are
Presbyterian. Just kidding.
So, in the end of the day, you got to become brilliant at the basics. So many people major in the minors. They go down the deep dive of keto, and they follow whatever the keto gods tell them to do. They do. Without ever really understanding the basic concepts of nutrition. And I think when people understand the basic concepts of nutrition, they become fad proof. They understand what actually drives weight loss. If they don't have a basic understanding that calories in versus calories out drive weight loss or weight gain, like, you can't avoid that. The only reason why keto works is because there was a calorie deficit created through the boundaries of keto. Right? Or intermittent fasting is another one. That's another popular one. The only reason why intermittent fasting, you can lose weight on it, is because it creates a caloric deficit. The boundaries, the limitations in which you eat, whatever it's an 8-hour window, whatever window you're doing, it limits the amount of calories you're consuming. Therefore, you lose weight. Let
me push back on the keto one, because I'm curious.
Okay.
So keto is generally high fat, like a lot of oils and fats, and which have a lot of calories in there. So I think I was when I was doing it, I was having far more calories than I do now. Is it not is it not possible at all to lose weight if I'm having more calories but less carbs or no carbs?
Long term, no.
Okay.
Long term, no. You might experience an initial, call it a flush, so to speak,
Sure.
because there's glycogen stored in our body. Okay, glycogen is the stored form of carbohydrates. It gets stored in our muscles and it gets stored in our liver. And when you aren't eating carbs, keto,
Yep.
essentially, so our glycogen holds water in our body. Okay, so it's dense, and it carries a significant amount of weight when we have stored glycogen in our body and our muscles. So as soon as we stop eating carbohydrates, the water leaves our body. So the water weight, you hear that all the time. Oh, the water weight. Well, it is.
Yeah.
So like I imagine you lost weight pretty quickly.
Yep.
Okay. Is that all attributed to fat loss? No.
Yeah.
Is there some? Sure. But there's a significant amount of water weight can be lost. I mean, it's just like how do MMA fighters and wrestlers lose 13 pounds?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they work it off, they sweat it off too, but they're doing something with their nutrition as well. They're eliminating things, dropping intracellular water. So that's the initial like win for people that do stuff like that. And then if that fuels the long-term success, great. It just typically doesn't.
Yeah.
The adherence on most fad diets is very low.
Yeah.
So, and I would also bet when you were doing that, you probably weren't tracking.
Was not.
Yeah.
For sure.
So maybe you weren't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I just look at a tablespoon of olive oil. Like I love olive oil, putting it on vegetables and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But look at it as how many calories are in olive oil. It's a ton.
Yeah.
So,
And that's a good point. I mean, like, fat, the macronutrient of fat is 2 times more calorie dense than carbohydrates and protein. So, and then you really get into the weeds a little bit with micronutrients that you're lacking.
Yeah.
With keto, if you're eating all protein and fat, it's going to be really hard to get fiber.
Yeah.
Which is important for gut health and
Yeah.
a lot of other things. Not to mention the vitamins and minerals from vegetables and fruit that you're not going to get if you're just eating steak.
So your recommendation would be for somebody to do what? Like, where do they start? If they're not happy with how they look, where do they start?
Yeah. So back to the basics. You got to understand that calories in, calories out is like the first law of thermodynamics. Like it's a law. Like you can't
The
beat
law
it.
of gravity.
Yeah, you're not going to beat it. So just once you have that settled, calories are king, but macros matter. Okay, that's a little saying. I don't know if I've coined it. Calories are king, but macros matter. So calories are the driver of whether you gain or lose weight. Okay, macronutrients, your carbs, your proteins, and fats. The amounts of which you consume in those will kind of largely determine if you're going to lose fat and muscle, or if you're going to keep muscle and lose mostly fat. Okay, so if we're eating higher amounts of protein in that macronutrient distribution of the calories that you're eating, you're going to retain lean muscle mass, which is what we all want. Like, why would you want to go from a bigger marshmallow to a smaller marshmallow?
Yep.
Like
Still marshmallow.
Yeah, exactly. You're still a marshmallow. And it happens all the time. People, like I have a InBody machine that I can assess people's body composition. And if you just diet, just paying attention to calories, and you're not doing anything from a macronutrient level, you're not really paying attention to the protein that you're bringing in, largely protein.
Yeah.
And then you're not strength training, people will literally just become smaller versions of themselves, and their body composition doesn't really improve, even though they might have lost 20 pounds. So on the scale, it's a victory, but body composition-wise, they're not a whole lot healthier than they were, 20 pounds heavier. Now, you can make the argument that they're healthier because they're 20 pounds lighter, for sure. But if you want a healthy metabolism and body composition, you got to combine, the calorie thing's got to be in check. The macronutrients, namely protein, is the biggest driver in maintaining and or gaining lean muscle mass. And you got to strength train. You got to strength train, men and women alike. And if you got those 3 things checked, you're going to start getting some good results if you do them consistently.
So where should people fall? Let's start with the guys. Where should guys fall on that percentage-wise, the breakdown of the macros?
I typically start people with a 30-30-40. So 30% carb, 30% protein, 40% fat, men and women. But you tell a woman that, and they're like, that's way too many carbs. I'm like, oh, here we go. Here we go. Like, you should be thanking me because I'm like advising you to eat this many carbs, you know, but it's just been so bombarded.
Yep.
Carbs are bad. Carbs are bad. It's like, good night. They are not bad.
Yeah.
Okay. But the thing about 30-30 is it generally takes their protein for where they're currently at, and it is an increase in their protein, getting them closer to more of an ideal protein intake. But it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So like if they're eating, let's just use an easy number, like 150 grams of carbs, it's 150 grams of protein. Easy to remember.
Yep.
Like mentally.
Yep.
That's why I start them there. Nothing physiologically or researched at 30-30. You know, I just know from experience that increasing protein is really going to help for a number of reasons. Maintaining their muscle mass, helps with satiety, helps them keep them fuller longer. And it actually helps, you actually burn a few more extra calories by breaking down more protein in your diet. And then from there, I can kind of throttle up and throttle down as we reassess down the road. But for men and women, I start them at 30, 30, 40.
I love that you say that. Yeah, macros has been for sustainability, right? I've done the fad diets or the things that I know are unhealthy, right? I was training for Kauai. I know what I'm doing is not good. But for 3 months, I can, basically starve myself.
Yeah.
And I'm going to lose a lot of weight really fast. But I can't live like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so glad you brought up macros. I'm big on that. And then, because for your kettlebell, it being kind of like HIIT training, is there is the science behind that of like continuing to burn like the fat and the calories throughout the day, as opposed to if you just do certain workouts, they're not high intensity intervals? Is it true that like, okay, like when my workout's done, I'm done sweating, I'm done burning, but with the HIIT training, right? Isn't that kind of the thing of like, my body, whatever. I don't know the fancy term.
No, yeah, no, I get what you're saying. So like strength training, resistance training, metabolic resistance training, HIIT training, so long as it's a strength training HIIT. Sometimes HIIT training is just like, body weight, and, you could call it HIIT training jump roping,
Yep.
But yeah, as long as it's combined with like the strength element, any kind of strength training is going to leave your metabolism elevated for anywhere, depending on the intensity of the workout, from like, it can be 24 hours later, it could be 72 hours later. So it stays elevated for quite some time when you do those types of workouts, which is an additional benefit. When you contrast that with just in like aerobic training, which is, kind of lower intensity type of, if you're just going for a run, if you're hopping on the elliptical, whatever, the calories typically, your metabolism comes back to a resting level way quicker when you do that type of training. Not to mention, you're not stimulating the lean muscle tissue, all the muscle fibers, the skeletal tissue that is necessary for men and women to just age well. Cardiovascular fitness is good. I want to make sure that I'm clear with that, because people think that I'm anti. I'm like, I'm not anti. Yeah. I'm just saying, if you got this much time, you need to be strength training.
Yeah.
If you want to get the most bang for your buck.
Let's talk about like why. So for the average person, the average listener, what's the cost of not doing this? We're talking about macros and calories and tracking and training and the science behind it. Like, break down for the average person, what's the cost of not doing this, of not developing some sort of health program for their life?
It could be so many things. The cost could be literally years on your life. That's like dun dun.
Yeah.
But seriously, if you become type 2 diabetic which is largely reversible and largely attributed to just sedentary lifestyles, you're probably significantly cutting lifespan. So there's that, right? That's a heavy cost, and one that I would hate to, have that revelation when you're like 70 and you're like, man, I'm not going to be around here much longer, and I could have if I just would have,
Yeah.
So there's that, and I think the richness of life, I think you lose out on experiences, like me, 40 years old, being Uncle Rico right now. Like, I don't know too many 40-year-old guys that could do that. And I'm not here to pat myself in the back. That's just an easy example for me to draw right now.
Yeah.
Playing with your kids, so many, I get to coach so many kids right now. And I can tell you just about immediately, and this might sound judgmental, but whose dad plays catch with little Johnny? Whose dad plays whatever with little Johnny? Within probably 5 minutes of seeing the kid move.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'm generally right. I'm not always right, but, that's richness of life, your offspring, your kids. If they don't see you doing it, largely like that behavior is caught more than it's taught, So when my daughter wakes up at 6 a.m., scares the crap out of me, which you've probably seen in the Kettlebell Collective. I'm doing a live session and all of a sudden, boom, she's there. I'm like, God, little girl. Lucky I haven't been concussed by a kettlebell.
Yeah.
But they see it. And if you're a parent and your kids don't see it, there's a much more likely, there's a higher likelihood that they will not do it when they're older, just because you didn't. And that's heavy.
Yeah.
But that I think that's where people get caught up. Like, and that's why they fail, is because they make it all about themselves. There should be enough reasons for yourself to pursue something like this. And it's not, success in this arena doesn't mean six-pack abs and being shredded.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be that at all. That's the way that's how it gets marketed.
Yeah.
But it's not that.
Yeah.
But when it transcends yourself, when you do it for reasons that transcend your own benefit, I do this so my kids see me do it, because I know that if I don't do it, they're probably not going to do it later in life. Apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, so to speak.
Yeah.
I do it. I'm a coach of multiple sports in my community, so I want to be a positive role model. I want to be the fit guy. I want them to be the guy that they go to and like, hey, how do I get better at this? How do I do this? And it gives me an opportunity to sow seeds into their life.
Yeah.
And these are skills that aren't taught well anywhere.
Yep.
I mean, FIAD classes are almost non-existent, in our elementary schools and in our high schools. I mean, how are these kids going to learn it? I think mom and dad.
Yeah. What about for the young entrepreneur that doesn't have a wife and kids, not married? Talk about the carryover effects into other aspects of
Good point.
that person's life.
Well, I mean, so Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about the spillover effect of physical exercise. And I don't remember exactly what form, or if he even attributed it to a form of exercise, just physical exercise. The spillover effect of how that discipline leads to other disciplines. The more disciplined you are with your health and fitness, I guarantee you feel more dialed with your business. You feel more mentally engaged, you're sharper. And when you're not, you're just not, right? So it's just one of those disciplines that spills over. Obviously, there's physiological benefits to it, but it's just the discipline of doing something hard that leads to the next, tackling the next task. And if you, from a physical fitness standpoint, if you're not, it's really, resistance is kind of a metaphor. Like, you're overcoming resistance when you're strength training, right? But in life, like when you come up against resistance and you're not used to doing hard things, it's really easy to go, it's hard.
Yep.
I don't want to do that. I want to do that speaking engagement.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Totally. I told my wife, Beck, I said, when that alarm clock rings in the morning and there's a war in my head, there's one guy that says, Austin, get your butt out of bed and go work out. And there's the other one that says, oh, you're up a little late. I think you need another half hour of sleep. And like, you got to win that battle immediately when you hit the alarm clock.
Yeah.
And if you do, that carries over in how the rest of your day looks like, how you feel. And it's the workout and the physical benefits are one thing, but the mental win in your head of knowing I won this morning, I won the battle.
Yeah.
Man, I think that's more powerful than the impact that you get from lifting weights.
100% is the mental side.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of neuroscience that'll support that.
Yeah.
Like every time you let the snooze button win, you let the alarm clock win, like the neurons and the synapses and the myelination, like it gets reinforced. Like, okay, next time, alarm clock wins. So and it takes a while that's why habits are so hard to mold, and then also break, but it's worth it. It's worth it.
You mentioned the book Atomic Habits, which I've read and really like, and it talks about habit stacking and developing new habits off of the ones that are established in your life. And before doing kettlebells and really having a consistency in that arena, I didn't have anything to stack off of. So I've been able to stack off of that and how the rest of my morning looks like, the rest of my day looks like. And so, it's been great.
And I just want to, I agree with that. And I think that's true in every area of our life, even faith, right? In faith, we talk about it of you're feeding somebody, like one of the dogs being fed, your flesh is being fed or your spirit's being fed. Right. So that daily discipline of creating habits, it's like, who am I, if you take it away from faith, but just, is the snooze button winning? Like, is my lazy self kind of being fed, or is my healthy, kind of probably my dream reality of what I want? I want to want this. Well, my decisions are going to choose if I actually achieve it and actually want it. Or not. I mean, I always joke about reading. It's like, well, do I want to read? I hate reading. I loathe reading. I have not read many books in my whole life. I don't know how I got through school, but I want to read, but I don't want to read. Well, if I can create a discipline every single day and choose it, I feed that, I can create a healthy habit and weight training. If I can just get to the gym and 15-minute power workout, I can create the habit and go on. If I can say no to my flesh and my sinful desire of either laziness or greed, or you name the struggle. I say no to that and I choose Jesus, and I wake up in my morning, I spend time with him in intimacy with God. I'm feeding my spirit. And so it spills over in every area of your life. Like, who are we feeding? Which dog are we feeding? Which whatever you want to say.
Nail on the head right there.
Nail
on the head.
Let's shift gears. Flanouflage.
Oh yeah.
Where did that idea come from?
Well, I, like you, I just outdoorsman. So, and I have a affinity for flannel. Just like it. It's timeless, it's comfortable. And being a bow hunter, I'm a bit cynical about camouflage, just the whole industry at large. Like, it's just getting so, really. You know what I mean? Like, and I think we all kind of get...
Sitka's good gear, but man, it's expensive.
And I have a whole Sitka setup, so I get it. So we all kind of, buy what we want, what we get sucked into, so to speak. But then there's always that little Fred Bear, which is like a vintage bow hunter.
Got it.
Fred Bear, who's a minimalist, is like, just sit down, shut up, be still. And you'll be fine hunting. So that's kind of the demographic for Flanouflage. But let me backtrack. So, like flannel, was wondering why there wasn't a camouflage concept with kind of that plaid flannel design. And I was talking about this with a buddy of mine, and he's like, we should start something. I'm like, yeah. You know what? I have a cousin who's a graphic designer. Let's set up a time and I'll have her kind of show me how to design some stuff just to be dangerous. Well, she walked me through some of that stuff and came up with a design and had a sample made. And this is after finding out that no one's done this. Nobody. So I had a sample made and I started wearing it around, just not telling anybody, like, hey, check this out. What do you think? Just wearing it, saying nothing. And people going, where'd you get that? Posted a picture of me fishing one time with it on, and comments, where'd you get the hoodie? And I'm like,
did you say anything yet? Or
I probably teased him a little bit, like, just hold on, So that's where it all began, honestly. I found a manufacturer and then bought a small quantity and sold them just to kind of, family and friends. And then have just kind of continued to just reinvest. And it's kind of grown into a handful of different items. And it's a fun project.
Yeah.
It's got some upside, like it's taken, like people like it. It's definitely going to not be for some people, but in this area, people really enjoy kind of the brand.
Yeah.
And I've sent some samples out to some influencers. Like the guys in the hunting public have been wearing it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
So there, maybe down the line, there's something there. So yeah, if you watch the episodes, the last few episodes, they're not, well, a couple times they're wearing it while they're hunting, but it's usually when they're back at the crib.
Yeah.
After they're chilling, eating at the end of the day, they're wearing it.
Huh. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really
I mean, and they got a huge following. So who knows, right? And that's why you just keep grinding. Like we do really well when we go to like local, we do local booths and stuff like that. Like this holiday season, it really picks up. So, and it's fun. Like it's time, it's effort, but chasing a passion like that, and it's in the outdoor industry, it's already something that I'm going to be doing. So like the content creation doesn't take a whole extra time. It's like, well, I'm just going to wear this while I go fishing.
Yeah.
Yep. There it is.
Yeah. Right.
Yep. And then you get enough other people wearing it and tagging you with.
It's an awesome idea.
Yeah.
When you found out nobody else made it, are you like, I maybe just hit the jackpot? How nobody made this?
Yeah. Kinda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kinda. And then you just.
Those are the best ideas where you're like, it's gotta, like, somebody has to have it.
Yeah.
You're like, nobody has this?
Yes.
I'm a genius.
I know.
And people do comment on it. My brother Zach and I wore it to the Member Guest golf tournament, the golf polos, and man, everybody's like, "Where'd you get that shirt?"
Yeah, looks pretty sharp.
And when I got the hoodie, and
Yeah.
people always comment.
Yeah.
Because it's super unique.
It is. It is. So
Yeah.
just gonna keep plugging away with that. I have fun with it.
Yeah. Where can people go to buy it?
Well, you just gotta get the spelling right.
Yeah, I've struggled a couple times with it.
So just flanouflage.com.
Okay.
FLANOUFLAGE.
Okay.
Flanouflage.com. And you can find us on Instagram and Facebook just by, yeah. Cool. No one's got.
Maybe we need an affiliate link for the Pay It Forward podcast.
There's wholesale opportunities.
Yeah.
In case anyone's interested.
Yeah.
We
Cool.
might be interested.
Yeah. Well, maybe to end, I know you're super passionate about talking about your daughter, Lydia. You've written a book on it, which I've read. So tell us a little bit more about her and the impact that she's had on your life.
Yeah. So you mentioned like life-defining moments or turning points. There's been several in my life. One, I think when my mom passed away, and then when I gave my life to Christ was probably the most impactful by far. And then, getting married. Jenny, sorry.
That's up there.
We just had our 13-year anniversary yesterday. So
Congratulations.
yeah, I'm blessed. And then when Livia was born, and all those, all that adversity. So a little bit about Livia for anyone who doesn't know. So she's got a really rare form of epilepsy, which we recently just also found out that it falls under the umbrella of cerebral palsy too.
Okay.
So that was interesting when the doctors were like, yeah, so she's got this. And we're like, no, she's got, KCNQ2 is the kind of the medical name for her form of epilepsy, which there's a lot of, epilepsy is kind of like cancer in that there's a million veins of them.
Yeah.
Epilepsy is kind of the same way. I've had to explain it to a lot of people. Usually they don't know that. So anyway, so she's delayed in every way imaginable, from feeding to motor control, speech. But in the same way, so the book that we wrote, I penned it. She taught me the lessons is Special Strengths Lessons from Livia. And it's 20 different lessons about not just being a dad of a special needs child. Although if you happen to be a parent of a special needs child, you'd probably relate, but it transcends all that. Like there's just powerful lessons. If I could summarize it into perspective Like she's given me so much perspective of compassion, empathy, but on the same side, like as being a tough love kind of guy, like the laziness now is almost like I almost have a greater disdain for laziness because when people have the ability and the wherewithal to do all the things that they should probably do, there's these beautiful souls like Livia who can't, and they would love to, you know. So that perspective has been profound. And then just getting to be, it's been a privilege to be a dad to Livia. You know, I tell her every night that I'm just so lucky to be her dad. Like it's a gift. It's an absolute gift. It's not a burden. It comes with challenges. It comes with things that I desire for her, but it is such a rich life that most people don't get to experience, you know. So I'm just telling her how proud I am of her and how wonderfully strong she is. She has a double hip surgery coming up November 2nd, and I'm just like, and she'll probably laugh her way through it. It's amazing. It's amazing. So I definitely have a heart for, you know, the special strengths community.
Yeah.
You know, because who doesn't have special needs? We all do. Yep. You know, they are magnificent if we just got to look, you know, and I get the awkwardness if you're not exposed to it. But my encouragement to anyone listening would be the next time you see or come across a special needs child, adult, whatever, is like, just slow down and like, don't try to avoid the situation because it's awkward. I totally understand because I've been there. I remember that feeling that way, and just try to connect with them. Just say hi, you know, like cool hat, cool shirt. What's your name? Even if they can't talk, someone will talk for them. You know, there's a lot of power in that community.
Yeah. Yeah. What a blessing. What, like you said about perspective, man, I can think back to defining moments and just changing perspective of the way that you look at things. So
yeah, man,
if you're sitting on your butt out there and just kind of getting by and not really appreciating what you have, not taking care of your body, maybe the time isn't now, but maybe it is. And maybe the time is now to really take what you, to not be lazy, to treat your body as a temple.
Yeah.
And to take care of yourself, because there's people out there that can't go to the gym and they can't work out and they can't track their calories and they can't run a business and lead people. Like, man, you just can't take that stuff for granted. And sometimes it takes moments like that to really put that in perspective. But you don't have to have those moments to have perspective. You can be listening to this and see and understand that and the experience that you have with Livia, and that be your perspective changer.
Right. Yeah. Everybody's stories matters, man.
Totally. So
I really appreciate you sharing. Yeah. Beautiful. I just love your heart for that, and
thanks,
and
man.
you being vulnerable and sharing it with us. So I think that's, it just goes beyond. You keep saying the word transcend in the episode, but like, to me, that's the heart of compassion and the way that the Father looks at all of us. And so it is that beautiful gift of like, Jesus has given you like a foretaste of like his love for us. And like you said, I can't imagine how difficult that is. I have a son, and it goes through your mind of when your wife's pregnant, I don't know what's going to happen. Right. But then there's so much beauty in what people see as struggle or adversity.
Yeah.
Just how like thankful you are, because my son does not have that. But I assume it's the same way of like, and you can't understand it until you are a parent, but it's like that you look at them and it's this gift of like, I just felt like the Lord revealed like how lucky, like you, like you're not like a part of my, like you are an individual life, and that like God chose me to get to be your dad, and you're perfect, beautiful. Like I couldn't imagine you any other way. Like you are perfect as you are. And I get, like, there's no better gift that the Lord has allowed me. I get to be Addie's dad. You get to be Lydia's dad.
Right.
And so I appreciate you sharing that. And I think there's major takeaway for a variety of things in life just from that perspective and heart. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, man. My pleasure.
That's great. I would just put it out there. I'm just kind of thinking about this now, but if somebody's interested in your book, you sell them, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to offer anybody that's interested in reading Brandon's book, if this is speaking to you, send us a DM. I'll pay for it. Might limit it if it gets a little crazy, but if cost is an issue, if you're interested in reading Brandon's book, send us a DM on our page. Email us at, what's our email, Keegan?
I'll include it, but it's thepayitforwardpod@gmail.com.
Okay.
Believe it or not, the Pay It Forward podcast at Gmail was already taken.
Send us a message. Get a hold of us some way. I'll send us your address, name and address. I'll buy a book and send it to you. It's awesome. Great read. And that just might be the change of perspective that you need to take action on other areas of your life. So
Cool, man. Thanks.
yeah. So to end us, Brandon, if there's one takeaway you want our listeners to get, what is it? What should they take away from this episode?
I would say a buddy of mine one time said, live an inspired life. And piggybacking off of what you just said, like all these adversities, we all got stuff going on in our lives, right? And we either coming out of a storm, going into a storm, we've all heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's true, it's life. But I've just learned to be inspired, by all of those events. So like for my daughter, I'm inspired to be a great dad because of her situation. Like it just inspired me to be better. When the business fell apart, I'm like, it inspired me to go create something new. If someone's watching this and the whole fitness and wellness standpoint hit them and they're 100 pounds overweight, be inspired by the journey. It's going to be a hard journey, but be inspired by it. Be inspired by the business dreams and goals that you have, and it's a tall mountain to climb. Be inspired by the mountain you got to climb.
Love that.
Well, awesome. Well, yeah, thank you. That's
for being
awesome.
here, Brandon.
Thank you so much for joining us. Honestly, it's a privilege to get to sit down and speak with you.
Likewise.
Totally.
Likewise.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. We sincerely hope that you learned something today. And as always, we appreciate your support and hope that you can all find a way this week to pay it forward.